Are you feeling like you're missing precious time with your kids because of work, stress, or just the daily grind of military life? Well, if so, you're not alone. As a veteran or a service member, you've already sacrificed so much, and now you want to show up for your family in a way that feels meaningful and connected. And just imagine being able to build deeper bonds, give your kids personalized education, and keep some stability no matter how often life moves you around. That dream is more possible than you think. In this episode, Natalie Mack shares her experience of 23 years of homeschooling across multiple duty stations, yes, even overseas. And she breaks down the unique challenges military families face with education, how homeschooling can be both empowering and flexible, and why it might just be the tool you didn't know you were looking for. Whether you're considering homeschooling or you're knee-deep in it already, this is the conversation that brings clarity, encouragement, and real-world tips that will help you along your journey. But before we dive in, I also want to take a moment to raise awareness for something deeply important to our community, the Global War on Terrorism Memorial Foundation. This organization is working to build a permanent national memorial in Washington, D.C. to honor our service members, the families, and civilians impacted by the global war on terrorism. If you want to learn more or find out how you can support the mission, visit gwatmemorialfoundation.org. Now let's get into today's episode. Natalie, welcome to the show. I am so glad to have you here. Hopefully you can share some insights with us on military homeschooling and the type of stuff that you've gone through, but looking forward to this.
I am too. Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, let's kind of just take a little kind of step back and see kind of where your journey, what got you motivated to start homeschooling within, your family, and especially in context of a military family. What was the motivation there for you, and how did you kind of get started with that?
So that's a good question. We've been homeschooling 3+ years, all within a military context. And when we started homeschooling right before 9/11, so that's a signature date there.
Yeah.
We prior to that, our children that were school aged, we had 3 children at the time. Our 2 daughters were in a private Montessori in Maryland, and we were in between military, if that makes sense. My husband had served active duty intel in the Army, had gotten out to pursue ministry. And so we were in that space living as civilians in Maryland and prior to coming in. So that summer we had decided, and he had an opportunity to come back in the Navy as a chaplain. And we had met several families who were homeschooling, and we really liked what we saw from their families. We had this amazing time bonding together and learning together and exploring life together.
Yeah.
And but we had this great private Montessori experience that we really, really liked, and everything seemed perfectly fine. So the first we got were to California, and we really felt like, oh, this is a pivoting point. This is a time that we might want to homeschool. Another factor was that our youngest daughter was at one point in daycare, and we just felt as if we didn't have enough quality time with her. And I TEDx on the impact of homeschooling, and it talked about our journey and how our youngest daughter's preference for this person really was just something that just kind of caused us to pause. And it was good for your children that are in, if they're in daycare, to like your provider, but we felt that there was a little bit more bonding than should have been with me. And so all of those factors came together, and we found ourselves embarking upon homeschooling and have not looked back. And it's been an incredible journey.
That's awesome. And part of the reason why I wanted to have you on the show to talk about this is because homeschooling has just kind of blown up, I think, recently,
Yeah.
especially post COVID time period where
Yes.
more and more kids were at home. It wasn't necessarily homeschooling; they were doing school, but just at home. If that
You got it
makes sense,
correct. School at
right?
home, we call it.
Yeah, exactly. And again, nothing wrong with any of the education choices that you choose, but there's pros and cons to a lot of it. And I know when I was younger, and even people older than me, uh, if someone was homeschooled, it was almost looked at as like a strange thing, like what's wrong with this
Yes.
picture. Everybody seemed to go to either public school or private school, some sort of school like that,
Hmm.
and it's okay. Well, why do you have to be homeschooled? Why
Right.
are you going to school like the rest of us? Like what's and as a
What-
kid, like things that are different, they strike you as odd, and it's like, well, what's wrong with that person? Not
Exactly.
what's wrong with me or anything like that, because obviously I'm perfect and I'm normal,
Right.
and that's a kid's mind, right? And I'm not saying that there was anything wrong with the way
Right.
I went to school, but my wife and I, we started homeschooling for a while, and wife had some medical issues, and didn't really have a choice but to send our kids to public school for
Hmm.
half. And when they were at school, we felt the same thing that you were experiencing.
Yeah.
We weren't as close with our kids anymore, and
Right.
we felt like we were just kind of growing apart. And I think especially young kids, that's kind of an important time period in their life, and an important
Yes.
time period to make connections and bond and things like that. And some people have that argument of, oh well, they don't know how to socialize and make friends. Our kids had so many friends, growing up, and there's even still there's these groups that you get a part of, and it
Right.
just is such a uh, well environment where just so many
Yeah.
people come together and hanging out, and going out to the parks or having fun, but also learning at the same time.
Hmm.
And so it's gosh, it's just a different way of looking at it. I probably 30 years ago asked me, when you grow up, when are you going to have are you going to homeschool? I'd probably be like, I doubt it. Like, why would I?
Yeah.
Um,
Why?
but
Right.
but it's just a different thing. So
It
um,
is.
from your experience
Hmm.
with your children going, and I imagine there's probably different duty stations as you're moving around from place to
Hmm.
place. What were some of the challenges that you faced, as a family specifically, when it came to homeschooling, and what were some of the ways that you kind of navigated some of those challenges?
So one of the most, and that's good questions too. Definitely one of the most common challenges that military families who choose to homeschool experience is navigating the new laws for the state that they
Mm,
to, and helping military families realize that the laws you follow are not based on home of record, and so much in our life is home of record. And so you naturally, as a family, think, oh, I'm going to homeschool based on my home of record. And that's not actually the law. You
right.
need to homeschool based on where your children physically reside. 30 days or more is a general rule. And so when I say where your children physically reside, and someone may say, well, our children will be residing where we reside. And we know in the military, mostly that's true. But there are some situations where someone could be a geo bachelor, right? And so you're living in a different place than where your sponsor is assigned. And so it's really clear because homeschooling is about the children, really where they physically reside. And so that's a big challenge, is navigating the laws and recognizing that you need to research and find out what the new law is. And it's not something that you have to dig and hunt. It's very easy to find it. One of the sources is through an organization called Homeschool Legal Defense Association. I wear one hat where I work for them part time as the military outreach coordinator. And so this podcast, though, is not me representing them. I always have to put a disclaimer out there. This is me in another capacity on the podcast. But I will shout them out because they do have a legal page that you can reference as you're a military family and you're moving. The other is, what is it like homeschooling if you get orders overseas?
Right.
OCONUS, what is that like? And so that's another of homeschooling, another journey where you don't have to follow any particular laws if you're there on accompanied orders under in a country that you have. The U.S. has SOFA in place with. And so those are the big things. The other piece, a lot of families think, oh, military families annuity and that
Hmm.
stability, and that is still very true. But that doesn't mean we don't have adjustments similar to if we were not homeschooling. We still have to get adjusted to the new duty assignment, the new installation if you're on a base or even connected. And we have to find our new homeschool community.
Yeah.
And it could be a homeschool co-op, it could be a homeschool support group, it could be a few families at homeschool that you just do life together with. And so your children need to find their tribe, and you as the homeschooling parent, traditionally it's the mom, but we know sometimes there's dads that are homeschooling, and so you just need to find your and get reconnected. And so those are some of this is that every 2 or 3 years we have to find that new homeschool community, and we have to make sure we're following the law for that new state.
Yeah, and you mentioned something earlier, and I understand each state is different,
Yes.
and they're all going to have their own laws, but each country is going to be
Mhm.
different. I know there are some countries that are very much not friendly to homeschooling,
Yes. Yes.
and what are some of those there? Like I believe Germany is one of those
Yeah.
countries where it's very unfriendly to homeschoolers.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
how do you navigate that if you want to continue that if you happen to
Hmm.
get stationed there?
Yeah, so one of the neat things about being military is that if you get assigned to a country, Germany, which you're right, it's illegal to homeschool in Germany, but being active duty military on orders, you're in a different category. So we know that when we get orders overseas, there's something called the Status of Forces Agreement. We call it SOFA, SOFA. And the SOFA does not specifically address homeschooling, but what it does is it gives certain rights that you, as an American in this particular country that they have the SOFA agreement with, so say Germany, it gives you rights to proceed in life as if you were in the United States. That's kind of the best way to say it, specifically for education purposes.
Hmm.
And so, even though it's illegal to homeschool, you are in a protected status just by benefit of being on orders. Now, if a family is overseas because their sponsor has orders there, but they were not on what we call accompanied orders, which means that the orders, military is very clear. You get orders to a new assignment. It says if your family is coming, then that's accompanied. If they're not, then it's unaccompanied. And we know some assignments are unaccompanied, but families may say, wow, you're going to Germany. That would be love. I would love to live in Germany, take the
Yeah,
kids and explore. But if you're not on accompanied orders, you're in a different category because now you may be subject to the laws of Germany, if
right.
that makes sense. And so the SOFA covers people on orders. And if a family's not on the orders to be there, you just chose to live there with your active duty member because, of course, you don't want to be separated, but
Sure.
at the same time, you have to recognize that you may not be able to continue homeschooling. And so that's where something like HSLDA does come in handy as well. And if you know that you can actually reach out to them and look into what that looks like. But in general, that's the rule of thumb is the SOFA does allow you to go ahead and continue life as if you were in the United States with certain caveats that don't really apply to education. So
Well, that's something I was not familiar with.
yeah.
I just assumed that, like with the state laws, it kind of just the same thing applied to the other countries. You just have to
Right.
kind of follow their laws, and if it's illegal to homeschool in a country, then it would be just illegal for everybody.
Right.
Yeah, but I guess that, according to this, is not the
Yeah.
case, and that's
No, it's
that's actually a
not. We
really
homeschooled Italy, actually. We were in
okay.
southern Italy in Naples. And yes, plenty. It's a large homeschooling overseas, large homeschooling community
Excellent.
overseas, very large. And of course, Italy, Germany are where we have the most um, installations.
Hmm.
And so you have your community there, but definitely even, this in families and there. I was just
Okay.
speaking with someone who was reaching out for support. It's been fascinating seeing it. And one of the other benefits overseas, or yeah, I think I would call it a benefit for us, it was a benefit, is that you have the ability to enroll in the DoD school and you can take up to 3 courses. So if you're for maybe an advanced placement, what we call an AP course, and you don't want to do one online because there are plenty of opportunities to find an AP course for homeschoolers online, but you might want to in person, your student wants in person, then you could check that DoD high school, for
Okay.
example. And they can also participate in clubs and activities. And our children played on the high school soccer teams over in Italy. And so great. Yeah.
So there's a lot of challenges that come with homeschooling.
Hmm.
What are some of in your mind some of the upsides, some of the biggest benefits that you've seen for
Hmm.
your children, or even other children who were homeschooled in a environment like this, versus going to more traditional public education or even private schools?
Yeah. So I, there are quite a few benefits in my mind, and I will put another caveat out here that I'm pro homeschooling, and so I'm not anti public school.
Sure.
There are homeschoolers who will not affiliate at all with the public school, and I respect their rights, but to feel that way. But I'm not anti. But I have seen so many benefits from my own experience with our family. I may have mentioned, I'm not sure after I mentioned we've been homeschooling for 23 years. We have 5 children. We're in our last year, so I was just heading off to college in the fall. But the other four have already finished college. So they were homeschooled to college, have now graduated college, and we have this one last fifth child to go. And the benefits that I've seen for our family, I've seen them for other families as well. The ability to really dig deep into what you're really passionate about, what you're interested in. We have this thing called time flexibility as homeschoolers. So that means that we can manage our time in a way that would be really not even possible if your student is in a traditional brick and mortar school because the time is set. So for us, our children can get up earlier, get the amount of schoolwork they need to get done for the day, and then we can switch gears into passions and interests. It could be something conservation wise. It could be volunteering. It could be going on a field trip. It could be going doing errands together and giving your children an opportunity to learn how to do just daily activities of living out in community, from saying, hey, go in and take this into the post office and check on this and ask this question, or go into the grocery store and we're going to calculate like about how much our groceries are going to cost. We're going to do some practical math,
Hmm.
and it's just interesting to really take that time, and you get to know your children in such a unique way. It's really, I think, challenging with the amount of time you have left at the end of the day. If a child is in a brick and mortar, most of that's focused on getting the homework done, dinner, baths, and tucked into bed for the most part. And so when you look at it, you just have the weekend, and most Saturdays, right, and even Sundays are packed with, if you're doing extras like scouts or sports or something like that. So
Right.
it's a lot of time available now. So those are some of the benefits that I've seen. Some of the challenges is have confidence to know that you can be successful. That families do homeschool to college, and kids do very well.
Hmm.
That colleges do look for homeschooled students because they've seen how well they manage in school with managing their time, with being very independent learners. But you have to, as a parent, be able to say, okay, I know this is going to work. And so part of what I like to, as me as a seasoned homeschooler, is to encourage families to say, you can look at our journey. Yours may not look exactly that way. Like your students may not be college bound, as an example, but that doesn't mean that you won't have a successful homeschool experience, because your children's success is going to be aligned with who they are, what they're passionate about, what their skills are. So they might be choosing to enlist in our armed forces. They could be choosing to do a gap year where they take off and they travel and experience life that way. Might be going into a trade, which is not college bound. Or maybe they're saying, I don't want a 4 year university. I want to do a 2 year local community college, get my feet wet, get my confidence about doing college level work and all, and in transition. So some of the challenges is just kind of navigating that and being confident as a homeschooling parent that you can do it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of the biggest benefits that you mentioned there is just being able to explore the passions or interests
Yeah.
of the students of your children. Because if, like you were saying, a traditional school day, and again, I'm not anti any type of, it's important regardless
Yeah,
of where it comes from. So,
exactly.
so this is not me knocking public
Yeah.
school or
No, no, no.
private school,
Right.
anything like that. However, I will say this, that I do I do realize that when my kids were in public school, they'd come home at the end of the day, and yes, maybe there was homework, or they had like a baseball practice after school,
Mhm.
or something, and time was limited where
Yes.
we had the opportunity to things outside of any of that. And
Yes.
now that my kids are home, they've been home for several years doing homeschooling, and
Hmm.
the amount of time that we use to spend on, just call it more schoolwork, where
Right.
you're doing your math and your science and your history, and you're filling out the worksheets, and doing all that
Right.
kind of work. um, it's only a couple hours out of the day.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
really not that long.
It's
and then
not.
and then the rest of is exploring other interests,
Right.
or things that, like you were saying, going to the grocery store and calculating, when they're younger, trying to
Hmm.
get them to do math of,
Hmm.
how much uh, does all this stuff cost, and
Right.
how close are we, at the end, and then maybe even calculating the tax on the little bill, and those types of things. We do that in like a real situation,
Right.
and
Right.
that helps kind of drive home, like, why am I doing all this math? Like, when am I ever going to use it?
Right. Exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
so that's helpful, right? But
Yeah.
you know um, to me, the biggest piece is exploring those passions,
Yes.
because my two of my boys, they are passionate about music, and they are guitars, piano. They have even programs on the computer where they're creating their own music. As a matter of fact, if you listen to
Wow.
this episode and go back to the beginning, the intro music and
Yeah.
all that stuff, that was written by my oldest son.
Oh,
and uh,
amazing.
and so I'm using. I said, hey, I'm in the market for some new music for this show, and I said, here's a challenge for you. Go out
Right.
there and kind of list some other shows that are out there, and see what kind of is out there, and see if you can come up with something that's unique. And I gave him a few guidelines and everything, and
Yeah.
he did, and he came out, and I thought it came out great. And so I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to use this.
Amazing.
This is amazing.
Yeah.
Um,
That's awesome. Really.
but that's, again, that's a real life thing.
Hmm.
He made real life money because I paid him
Right.
for doing, and he was like, this is cool. Like, I can do
Right.
something with this. This isn't just me, fiddling around on the piano, or whatever, and just
Right.
playing for, once when it's done playing, you never hear it again, because
Right.
the sound goes away.
Right.
This is going to be on, many episodes, and
Exactly.
maybe
Exactly.
I'll refresh it someday too, and he'll update
Right.
that as well. But
Right.
we wouldn't have that opportunity. Um,
No.
I would have gone to some stock music site and paid $30 for a license to use somebody else's music, and
Right.
that it's not
Now
as
you've given
cool.
your child the opportunity to say, "Wow, this is music that
Yeah,
put together," and it's not just like you said, learning to play the piano and then you're done. It's not like, oh, okay, practice for 30 minutes and it's done. It's no, there's a purpose tied to
yeah,
learning the piano, and then they got compensated, which all children are like, that's not a bad deal at all.
right,
So
exactly. And
I
uh,
hear you.
and that's the thing that makes it, to me, uh, uh, important. Not
Mhm.
because I benefited because I got music for my podcast. Like, I don't care that much about
Right.
my main goal, but my main goal was giving him the confidence that, hey, this is worth something. Someone will
Mhm.
actually pay you for it,
Mhm.
and uh, it's good work that you're doing too, and
Exactly.
encouragement to encourage him to keep on doing it. And and he does. He keeps creating stuff. I'm just amazed. Like, I don't know where, you know
Isn't that
musical
amazing?
mind is just so amazing to me. Just
Yeah.
I've just honed in on it, and and it's great. But I want to talk a little bit about, you have a book, 101 for homeschoolers, right?
Yeah.
And that a ton of advice, 101 ton of advice in there.
I
Um,
even have it here.
oh yes, excellent. Yeah, you had that in the background. Excellent.
Yeah.
But
I keep it here.
what are some of the key takeaways for folks who are, either in the middle of homeschooling themselves, and
Mhm.
they're navigating? Maybe they have their, uh, they know there's a, change of duty station coming up at some point, or they're, hey, how am I going to continue doing this when I'm one state to another, or one country to another, or how am I going to that, or
Right.
or even maybe their kids are young and they haven't started, they're not school age yet, and they're
Right.
considering it, but they're not, how do I do this? What are
Yes.
some of the takeaways from this book that will help some of these listeners who are, considering homeschooling or continuing?
Right. So great. Thank you for shouting out my book.
Yeah.
When I started to write it, I actually said, "Oh, I'll write a few tips," right? And I kept going from our experience, and I thought, and then I got to 100, and I was like, "Okay, that's a solid number, 100 tips." But then I had one more I wanted to add, so that's how I got to 101. And what I love about it, hopefully, and from what I've heard from families, they love is like it has the my thoughts about it. So, like I put a tip. This one is trust the process. That's number one, and
Hmm.
they're not all sequential. It just happens to be 101, so they don't build on they build on each other for a solid message from me, but each tip stands alone, so you can read it, put it down, come back, and you don't feel like, okay, I need to refresh what was the last one. And then I have a prompt question as well, and then I have some spaces for you to be able to, jot your thoughts down. And so some of the takeaways, gosh, I'll just look here. Like the first one, like I said, is trust the process. So there are families who are thinking, their children are not school aged yet, but they're looking around and thinking, oh, I'm hearing things about other, the public school. I'm not quite excited about that. And I know I was, educated in public school, but I think things are different now. And, what's this homeschooling thing that everyone keeps talking about? And so trust the process that, um, you know, um, belief in your own ability,
Yeah.
belief in being the best advocate for your children. I always say, oh, a committee will be the best advocate for their children. And that belief that you're committed to their well-being, that you're going to see it out. It doesn't mean that homeschooling means you're a subject, so you don't have to be an expert at every subject. You don't have to feel like, oh, I did fantastic in school, so now I'm going to be a solid educator to my children. You don't, because there's a market of homeschool curriculum that comes alongside you, the teacher, you, the parent, and will help you be successful. Some of
Hmm.
it helps you as a parent teach the subject to your child in a real easy to follow ways, and others teach the child directly. There's online options, and then when they get to be older, there's other possibilities as well. There's even co-ops that you can participate in so your children can get some of the classes that they need. So there's an amazing homeschool community and market that will help you. So don't allow yourself to believe that, oh, only licensed teachers can actually teach
Right.
our children. And then the other one I would say is, what are your values that you want to impart? Homeschooling allows you to have impart your values. One of the things we have realized in the nonprofit that I started, Military Homeschoolers Association, is that we did a survey. We did the first survey for military homeschooling because there wasn't data out there. And one of the things that we were asking these families, we had 861 responses, families that chose to respond. And we ended up doing our data analysis with 763 solid responses to 68 questions. And what we discovered in that is that a lot of families are really kind of concerned about the environment that exists within the public school.
Hmm.
And they're concerned about how their children, and then consequently, that impact on the children comes into the family as a whole. And so, a child and children can't be impacted without it having some consequence to your family life, right?
Sure.
And what you want to do with your family and how you want your family, the values you want them to have. So homeschooling allows you to have that. So that put that that it allows you to have that impact and the values that you want to impart. And so the all the tips, the whole thing is I want people to have their homeschooling experience. And I want to realize that strong academics definitely, we as homeschoolers definitely want our children to be, educated well. But we also want to look at homeschooling as a lifestyle. So there are two ways. Families may look at it as an academic choice, or you can look at it as a lifestyle. And so, what I advocate in this book and in our own journey is to look at homeschooling as a lifestyle, meaning our children And us as parents, we're learning together, we're doing life together. And homeschooling is not just about 9 to 2 and 9 to 1 and 9 to 3 or whatever it is of academics. It's about you're living life together. If you're going to go on a trip and you're driving somewhere, involve the kids. So what are the stops going to be along the way? About how long will it take us to get from here to here? What are the places we want to see? Just, or make a list of the groceries that we need. Oh, can you check and make sure we need this, this, this? And you get to the grocery store, maybe, the kids that are old enough can go get certain items, right? Teaching the independence and really being able to celebrate your family, celebrate their accomplishments, and see their abilities. Like with your son in piano, wow, what a front row view you have in a way that you might not have if your child was not being homeschooled. It's not to say that, kids in school don't become accomplished pianists. That's not at all what we're saying.
Sure.
It's just that you have a front row view to see his development over time
Mhm.
and see how he started here and now look where he is. And that has to be amazing because that's your child, right? And you
Right.
would have missed it, right? It's like the learning to read. What exciting it is, as much as parents are like, oh, it's so hard teaching reading. But at the same time, when they first learn to read or when they first learn to walk, imagine not being there. It's the same thing for homeschooling. Like parents get excited when the child first starts to walk, right?
Right.
And they have a few stumbles and you see the process of the crawling to getting themselves pulled up at a table to being able, and then they fall and then they finally take those really sure, confident steps. And if you missed it. And so homeschooling allows you to have that front row to
Right.
really see and experience life and see the development of your children and know who they are and they know who you are, right? As a
Right.
family. Just
Yeah.
being in a family living together doesn't mean that's going to happen, right? You
Yeah.
have to be intentional about it.
That's right. That's right. And and to your point, you get to see those light bulb moments.
Yeah.
Even in their schoolwork when
Yeah.
maybe they're struggling with a certain concept, maybe math or
Yes.
multiplication or division or whatever it is that they're
Uh-huh.
studying at the time, and then they start to get it, and it's like
Mhm.
yes, like it,
Right.
it just clicked and it worked, and that's a great feeling to be able to see them grow in that and gain the confidence and not get frustrated because all their moving ahead of them because they all seem to get it, but
Right.
your child didn't, and then they get frustrated, and
They get
then
right.
what happens, and they get left behind because they're moving on to the next concept because that builds on the previous concept, and
Right.
um, you know you know again that not knocking public schools because
Right.
there's great
Right.
things that come from public schools,
Oh
but
yeah.
but
Yeah.
I know that that's something that could happen, and
Yeah.
so if
It's
and I don't think anybody will have more vested interest in a student's education and the success in their education as a parent would,
right. I
because
agree.
the parent is definitely want that student to have the absolute best. And hey,
Right.
if it takes another few days, another week or so to cover this concept,
Uh-huh.
having a hard time with it, let's take the time
Uh-huh.
to do it. Let's do it right
Uh-huh.
and make sure that we understand it and that we're
Uh-huh.
all good to go, and then we can move on. And um,
Exactly.
and you were talking too about earlier about all these different curriculum that are out there that uh, people can use to help
Uh-huh.
sure
Uh-huh.
that they have the most success in there. And one thing, we have three children that
Uh-huh.
I've noticed is that like for example, the math books that we use for one of our kids wasn't necessarily the same math books that
Uh-huh.
we would want to use for the other
Uh-huh.
kids because or history or science or whatever they
Right.
we use uh,
Yes.
different textbooks and different ways of teaching because they have different
Right.
learning styles, and
Exactly.
and so that's kind of a good thing too, is you get to kind
Yes.
of tailor it, help them learn how to learn
Right.
instead of maybe just
Yes.
memorize because just for the sake of it, hey, I just got to know this to pass a test and then let's move on to the next
Exactly.
thing. um,
Exactly. And
I know
help
that.
them love learning too,
Yeah,
right?
right. and
Yeah.
and and love getting those light bulb moments,
Right.
right?
Right.
When things click and it's like, I get it
Uh-huh.
now.
Right.
That's an awesome feeling. I don't care who you are. When something
Right.
that you're struggling with and all of a sudden it just
And you
clicks.
master it. Right.
Oh man, is that a good feeling?
Yes. Yes, I
And
agree.
so helping them have more of those moments and experience them, I think are awesome.
Yes.
And you talked about your organization, Military Homeschoolers Association. I did
Mm-hmm.
want to get into that just a bit too. I know you briefly mentioned it, but
Mm-hmm.
kind of what does do you provide and help folks in their homeschooling journey through that association?
Yeah, so I'm really excited about MHA. Military has acronyms. We
Sure.
call it Military Homeschoolers Association. We've named it MHA. Wow. We have a board of amazing people who are all in the military connected homeschool specular about who I selected to be on this first board, because this is my vision, my thoughts, and I wanted people who could come alongside and who see it and are passionate, and it's not just me. Okay, this is what we need to do, but they are invested and they see because they are actually living the life themselves. They are military connected homeschoolers, and so from that, we've developed one is our podcast called Base to Base, Military Homeschooling. And so it's base and then the number two base, military homeschooling. And the thought that, and I developed that and I said, let's put this podcast under MH because it's all for military homeschooling parent. And the uniqueness of it is it's going to be based on installations because we move so frequently. And now our family, we're on the retired side now 3 years. So we aren't moving, because the government sends us. But we lived that life for a long time. And we know that every 2 or 3 years we were packing up and moving somewhere else. And
Right.
so and we often as homeschoolers are trying to find somebody else who is at that next duty station who is homeschooling, who can share everything with us. Like, is there a co-op, or what's the local homeschooling community like, and you know uh, how many homeschoolers about so are on base, and what are the resources that exist, and like as a homeschooler there, because again, like I mentioned at the beginning, we are adjusting as well. We're looking for our next homeschool community. And so I thought the guest would be that military homeschooling parent at an installation who has committed, is involved, and is very knowledgeable about their community. And we're going to talk about what is it like at like Fort Cavazos. What is it like at like Fort Liberty? What is it like, here in the Belvoir area where we are to actually homeschool there? And then we'll bring you guests. We're looking always for curriculum providers who want to reach the military community. We are looking for organizations have a message, maybe education programs, so they just want to shout out their sponsorship of military homeschoolers. And so we'll feature them as guests or give them a sponsorship slot as well. And then we are creating a homeschool educational webinar series for like homeschooling 101, and it's going to go up through the high school to college piece. These will be videos that parents can plug and play, right? Just look at, and the knowledge and information that they have, that the videos will provide. We also will be doing a similar series, the professional and DoD space, called the School Liaison Officer. We call it the SLO in military communities, or the SLO, and helping them because I work with them and I travel quite frequently for the Air Force, for the Navy, and Marine Corps. I do virtual trainings for these school liaisons that are all over the world stationed at installations, and travel just was in San Antonio in December, and then I was in Jacksonville for the Navy, and they invite me to train the school liaisons. And so we want to say, how do we clone Natalie and turn this information into content that these new school liaisons can actually learn more about homeschooling, because they are the resource. They're supposed to be the knowledgeable resource on an installation and help military families who want to homeschool. And then we also have special needs that we are curating resources, because one of the things we found with our survey is that you have traditional that military families homeschool, and it's the continuity, right? And every 2 years we're moving. Um, but we're also finding that families are with that have neurodivergent children and they have these special needs also beginning to homeschool. And so we realized that our position is we want to help any military connected family who chooses to homeschool, we want to come alongside them to help them be successful. So that means lots of resources. That means lots of collaborations and partnerships. So we are creating these resources for special needs families. And we're partnered with like Blue Star Families, Military Child Education Coalition, known as MSEC. The Wounded Warrior Project partners with Elizabeth Dole and is a hidden helper coalition that we are partnered already with, United Through Reading, called UR, where they have these mobile book stations and they can get all these books to homeschoolers on installation. So we are like, it has taken off in such an incredible way that I am so excited. And so that's those are a few signature things that we have going on. And so I'm really excited about it.
That is pretty, and especially people with special needs. They're talking
Yes.
about.
Yes.
I have to imagine if moving from one place to another that frequently every 2-3 years. A big question. I don't have kids with special needs, but I would imagine if I did, the question that I would have is sources available wherever it is that I'm next
Right.
going to, and
Right.
if they are available, what's the quality of them?
Right.
How good is this quality? Um,
Yes. Yes.
and if it's not there, if it the resource doesn't exist, um, well, that's a problem, obviously.
Right.
Um,
Yeah,
but
it's a big problem. You're right.
but if it's miss, but just kind of because really nobody needs that service in that particular,
Mhm.
then that's
Mhm.
another problem
Right.
that I would have as well. And so, if you are equipped to be able to handle whatever the need is that
Yes.
your child has, then going into it, they're going to be okay.
Yes.
We don't need
You're
to
right.
go nuts trying to find a school district that has this particular resource, whatever
Yes.
it may be for our child. We can handle it. We can keep
Exactly.
it going, and that continuity is there.
Right.
Um,
That's what we
which
want.
which especially
Mhm.
for some kids, continuity might be very important because they thrive on routine,
Exactly.
and if you throw them
Exactly.
into a different environment, that could be a problem for
It
them.
can be hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
You talk about children, military children being dandelions, and that's the flower, right? And so they're very resilient.
Yeah.
And and I believe military families in general are very resilient, and the children are. But that doesn't mean that they don't have needs, and that this moving around and all of the um, unpredictability that can come with military life doesn't mean that they aren't impacted and that they don't need a little extra. So we hope through MHA to be that support to families and to be that support to the Department of Defense, because military families who choose to homeschool, having adequate support and resources is a retention as
Hmm.
well. And
Yeah.
we know also related to that is that many families are choosing to homeschool because they are not happy with their local school system. So families, that's a retention issue that DOD is looking at, as well as like, how do we improve the quality of our dependent children's education? And so families are pivoting to homeschool. So they still need the support and resources. Otherwise, the military life isn't working for them,
Right.
right? And it
Right.
has to work well for the family in order for the active duty member to be freed in their mind to do the job they need to do. And so it's really a big connection there. And the survey that we did high percentages of families who said, yeah, this is a retention issue.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I didn't think of that, but you want to be able to give those service members the choices to be able
Yeah,
to um, educate their children in whatever way that they see fit,
exactly.
wherever in the world that they end up. I think a crucial piece here
Hmm.
is that if you take those options away and they're now restricted in what they can or can't do,
Hmm.
and they might say, "Hey, you know what? This isn't working for me,
Right.
for my family. It's
Yeah.
causing a lot of stress and
Hmm.
and other issues." And
Hmm.
yeah, then you start losing good good service members
Right.
who otherwise would be maybe go on and continue a 20-year career, but decide to get out early because
Right.
hey, it's not working for our family.
It's
So we
not working. Yeah.
yeah
And Scott, that just ties to another thing is that we know the branches haven't met their numbers, right? And
yeah
when I say the Army and the Marine Corps, I think numbers. uh, it's really not something to get excited about. They
Right.
still have a lot of work to do. And so we don't, like you said, we don't want good quality members getting out. They really want more to come in
Hmm.
and they want them to stay. And so it's really important. One of the things I wanted to mention too, I'm not under my MHA hat. I have the homeschool Natalie Mack. I provide like homeschool consultations. I do helping families homeschool well, the high school to college piece, transcripts and all. And then I help families who have college bound athletes navigate the NCAA process. And I love to speak on that. But the piece that I want to mention in terms of the military is I have supported the Army and the Air Force and the Navy with the connection to the homeschool community because what has happened in the post COVID is the military is not finding the numbers of students in public school who desire to serve, desire to come into the service.
Mm.
And traditionally, right, you imagine a local school has an office, recruiters, and I mean, there's still some coming in. Clearly, I'm going to minimize that, but they aren't having the numbers that they used to have pre-COVID. And so a light bulb has gone off to where the military branches themselves have said, wow, this is a market of qualified high school students over here in this homeschool community. How do we reach them? And they've had hard times reaching them because we're not in a brick and mortar.
Yeah.
So you have to figure out how to get to us. Where are we? So we're in these co-ops, we're in these support groups, we are maybe at a homeschool conference held at the state level, a nonprofit, private, not state government, but
Hmm.
and so helping the military branches get connected. I've Army. I've traveled to speak for the Air Force recruiting, the Army, USAREC, United States Army Recruiting Command, did a capability exercise called a CAPEX at Fort Liberty. I do a lot. I was just in Miami Beach in January for the Army for recruiting brigade. And so it's been interesting seeing love that because I loved our military service, right? And I'm homeschooling, so I can speak the same language and
Right.
I can also be authentic in saying you really need to consider serving. And so kind of what happened out of that work that I've been doing is I have been now setting up ASVABs, Armed Services
Hmm.
Vocational Aptitude Battery. I connect with the MEPS, and we've hosted two in this DC, Maryland, Virginia area.
Oh wow.
So for homeschoolers to come into this ASVAB career exploration program, and what homeschoolers love is it's a free career assessment, and there's no commitment to enter military service. And so I have the homeschoolers. The military is looking for them for this ASVAB, and bringing it together has been super, super cool. And the homeschoolers themselves are like, wow, I didn't know I was good at this because that's that career exploration part of the
Right.
test. They bring their laptop, they take the test, it's self-paced, and they get their scores. And they keep their scores. They only give them to the military if they actually are interested in enlisting. So
Okay.
it's been a really neat opportunity, and it's a free test. So I set it up for homeschool communities around the country. So
Oh wow.
it's been really interesting. So
That is
yeah,
interesting. Yeah, and it does have a lot of different career interests that get brought up
yes,
in
yeah,
the test, and identifies what you might be good at, and
eh,
maybe it was just something on your radar
right,
before, but then again, going back to our point previously, you have time to now maybe explore this and see
exactly.
is
You're
that really
right.
something I'd like or
Right.
whatever. So, well, this has been very insightful, very interesting conversation. I know, I'm a little bit family, obviously your
Yes.
fans as well, but
Yes.
I think it's not. It's definitely not looked at the way it used to be.
Right. I agree.
Back years ago,
Hmm.
it's definitely an option that more and more families are doing.
Yes.
And for me, I'm not currently serving in the military anymore.
Uh
However,
huh.
if I was, um, I for sure would be exploring all the homeschool options just because, yes, you're moving all over the place all the time, but
Yes.
you want to make sure that you're making the most of it.
Right.
Especially in the military when maybe there's deployments involved and you're going to be
Hmm.
away for
Hmm.
6, 9, 12 months, 18 months, whatever it is. You're going to be away from your family for that long. You want to make the most of the time that you have with
Right.
them, and
Right.
I think that's kind of a crucial point as well. But I do
Yes.
want to thank you, Natalie, for coming on the show, sharing your insights into
Thank
military
you.
homes and your continued support of the military families and their homeschooling efforts through all
Thank you.
the work that you're doing. So it's really, really appreciated. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate the invitation. This has been great conversation. I love speaking on homeschooling and just kind of, providing insight so people maybe see it as a viable option. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks again.